nothing worthwhile. The recognized symbol of excellence in crappy podcasting.
If I understand. So I said to Gary, go on the Twitter. Tim wants you to do it. But don't put 10 seconds worth of energy into it. Either put down whoever the guest is, and that'll be it. And put it out there. And if anyone wants to follow along, they can. So we do the Twitter. Within 5 minutes, our fans are on Twitter. I don't know how many people are following the Twitter, like 40,000 people?
Yeah, I think we're at like 40 grand.
Something like that. 40 grand would refer to money. 40,000 people. Why would you say 40 grand?
I don't know. I
don't even understand why you say something.
Move ahead.
I'm trying. I'm really just distracted by you sometimes. 40 grand.
Everybody you're distracted
40 grand. You would refer to our listeners as 40 grand?
It's a fucking mistake. Jesus fucking Christ.
I don't know how you make those mistakes.
Luckily, I work for someone who doesn't make any.
40 grand. All right. So, here I am defending him.
This is going to be tough.
You just so angry. You know
I'm
what?
not angry,
I'm on the
Gary.
bad end of what, like Benji started it, now I'm getting the shit end of it.
Yeah, you're going to end up... See that's
Benji?
So, like I said, we have 40 bushels of listeners on Twitter. Because they're like corn, our listeners. Oh, is that incorrect?
40 bales.
40 bales of listeners.
Sheaves.
40 sheaves of listeners. Yeah. We have 40 acres of listeners.
Kilowatts.
40 cases.
That wasn't even a little funny, Robin. 40 cases. I mean, you're going to crack a joke, be funny.
Crazy things.
I know, but everyone's was funny but yours.
40 grand.
40
Sheaves is funny, cases is stupid.
I have 2 kids, and this guy is a straw. I can't stand him,
He's
Howard.
abusive.
I cannot stand him. I know this is your deal. He does this crap all the time, but I can't stand him.
Thank you. Thank you, Vicky.
You're welcome.
Right. She's all upset about it. I can hear it in her voice.
He drives me crazy. Why did you put him at the end of the movie? I hate that.
Oh, shut the hell up, you bitch. What a freaking bitch you are. What the hell do you do?
John?
Oh, shut up.
Hey, man, don't talk to her like that.
I will talk to her like that. She doesn't even know me, the freaking rat bastard call it.
John,
Thank
I know
goodness
you
you couldn't
because I
afford
hear
to
you on
know
the
you.
radio every day.
Yeah, here we go.
No, either.
Yeah, okay.
You copy Howard.
Oh,
Here's
yeah.
John doing his impression of me.
Howard. I mean, you can do.
Here's John's impression of me.
Yeah.
I think the rat jap
bitch.
ass
He said, I
bitch.
saw a heavy
Oh, my God.
and dark man approaching me, assailing me, and giving me a punch in the belly. She was examined by a doctor and pronounced in good health. So a little bit of wackiness before the parade. And Evander Holyfield returned to the ring on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Out against Ray Mercer. All right. Fight into a brawl.
You know Evil Dave can't read. I'll play you the Evil Dave game if you want.
All right.
Let me just play this one. We told them, make a PSA for blacks with low self-esteem.
Hi, this is Dave. I want to talk to blacks with low self-esteem due to societal racism.
Hi, this is Dave. I want to talk to all the black listeners about low self-esteem, racism, and talk to all the black listeners about low self-esteem. I like the black community. We've gotten a lot of good things from them. And
Sherman Munster.
We'll have a heart attack.
Have a heart attack.
Low self-esteem. What the fuck are we talking about? I like the black community. We've got a lot of good things from them. Actually, we now, the age-old question,
Trade
what would
U.S. for
Casey
private
like be if he was ugly? We know.
Wish to buy, sell, or trade items and dealers. Good morning. You're on Tradio. You're on Tradio. Go ahead.
Hi, how you doing?
All right, what's going on?
I got 2 items.
The other
That being?
Well, the first item, it's an item that has been in my family for a while. It's an item that, I got 2 items, but the first item, it's an item that I want to sell, and the item, it's an item that I have, but if you want to buy my item, I got the item.
Okay, don't. No, look, come on. Can we be serious?
Well, I got items.
Okay, what is it you want to sell?
It's an item.
Either say it or we're going to end this conversation.
What? Well, if somebody's interested in the item, they might want to buy it. I don't know why you're getting all upset with me.
Well, I'm getting upset because you're not saying what the item is.
Well, it's not one item, it's two items.
Go ahead, say the items.
It's an item that I've had. It's about 20 years old, the item.
What is it?
It's an item.
An item?
Yeah, if you're interested.
ITEM?
Yeah, if you're interested in the item, give me a call.
Number.
Huh? Well, I didn't tell you what the second item is.
Okay, go ahead.
The second item's also an item, but it's a little bit older item. It's 25 years old.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you want it, do you want it yourself? You want the item?
No, I want you to say what it is you're selling, or we're going to end this conversation.
I told you that I got two.
We don't mind people being friendly, but we just do not entertain comedians here. Good morning, you're on Radio.
Chris, I'm on the road. I lost my hat, my St. Patrick's Day hat on Hermosa yesterday, and I was wondering if you could just list it as if anybody found it was a beret green hat, knitted.
Green knitted beret. Okay.
I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, consider it done. Bye-bye. Okay, green knitted beret hat lost on Hermosa Street. Good morning, you're on Radio.
Yeah, hey, how you doing?
All right.
Yeah, hey, I was going to tell you, I was just on Smith Road, and I lost a box of fuck books, fell out of back of my...
Okay, looks like we're going to have to not open the phone line because we've got some clowns out there. All right. Sorry about that.
Woke means I can't get behind Trump, which is what I think it means, or that I support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine. Dude, call me woke as you fucking want. I'm not for stupidity. I am woke, motherfucker, and I love it.
Are you calling? I have nothing to say. Sorry.
To CBS2's Vanessa Murdoch. She's been in the mobile weather lab getting a check on conditions across the lower Manhattan area. Where are you now, Vanessa, and what can you tell us?
Right now, Mary, we're in the Woods Village with the mobile weather lab, and we have many people basically using the information out of the truck. What we've done is pulled up the Con Ed outages map. So many people... Okay, guys, let's look at... All right, guys, let's see.
Live from Merrick, New York, it's Nothing Worthwhile with Moody and Groove. Starring Evan Moody, Andrew Gruthius, with special musical guest Rob Zombie, and special co-host, friend of the show, Craig Hassenbein. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Nothing Worthwhile with Moody and Groove.
As Andrew Gruthius counts us down, welcome to Nothing Worthwhile. It's episode 114. It's our top 5 iconic moments of the Howard Stern Show. We are indeed live from New York. Let's bring in first our very special guest, our gracious host, emanating from Merrick, Long Island. Friend of the show, Craig Hassenbein. You've heard him on our WWF trivia competition and various other Howard Stern-related podcasts. Craig Hassenbein, welcome yet again to Nothing Worthwhile.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be back.
Man, a few words. All right, you get the McAllen.
Who won that trivia contest? You must have won.
No, I think you won.
No, Craig, it was tight until the final round, and then you smoked him in the final round.
Craig did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Craig knows his 80s and 90s wrestling trivia real solid.
He knows details that I don't.
Yeah.
But more in that golden era.
Gru's good, but then Gru, admittedly, there was a period of a couple of years he wasn't into it. In early 2000s.
I think that applies to all of us, though.
That is true.
We all had stretches.
I find myself a wrestling guru in the 87 to 89 window.
Just those 2 years.
That would be my sweet spot.
Real quick question: ever watch the current product? Does Raw and SmackDown ever make your airways?
Not all that lately.
Okay.
It really just the current product. I see the talent out there, and for me, it's just not the same. It's become more of a TV production than kind of a wrestling organization. I used to love all the dueling organizations and the talent trading hands, and one guy moving from Mid-South to WWF, and then one guy moving over to the Crockett promotion. So without that kind of trade-off, for me, some of the excitement's been pulled off, and I think the game itself has just changed.
All right. I remember all those times we would call from Craig's house, Coach Kirk, the Coach Kirk hotline to get our latest wrestling news. We'll actually speak a little bit more about wrestling somewhere down the line, but let's bring him in. Our co-host, Andrew Gutierrez. Gru, we are indeed live from New York.
As expected, and it's been a wonderful experience as always. It's been a fantastic weekend. I've been here since Thursday, and we've gotten to the city. We did the big benefit last night. We've been having a great time here with our dear friends. It's just been an absolute pleasure, and I'm glad that Craig is able to join us tonight as we close out this weekend with a very special episode of Nothing Worthwhile.
Well, we're going to do our top 5 iconic moments of the Stern Show, but let's look at the opening package, get some thoughts on some of the players throughout the Howard Stern years. Opening clip, Baba Booey, Gary Dell'Abate. Guys, any thoughts on where does Gary Dell'Abate land in the Howard Stern universe? Where do you see him?
Gary's evolved a bit, and it seems just kind of in the pecking order. He used to be a very fun character or an easy target for Howard, and it seems he's either gotten promoted through the ranks or he's not as much of, all those days with Gary glomming and all those. I mean, there was a blast to a lot of those shows, but I guess Gary's moved up, and he's clearly someone from a show standpoint that Howard leans on, and he seems to have a lot of authority over the cast and the staff. But we've gotten to know Gary pretty well over the years, and I guess we can relate to him. He's a big Met fan, he's a huge Springsteen fan, so probably not probably be a cool guy to hang out with.
Good points, Gru. What are your thoughts on Baba Booey?
Well, for at least 30 years, meaning since Private Parts, when Howard in his sort of acknowledgments, he really called Gary his main dude, and he's been that. And to me, he is the foundation of how the show works. I think he doesn't get a lot of credit for. I don't think he gets enough credit for what he does. He's been an off-air and on-air foil for Howard.
I was just thinking of that term, foil.
Which is invaluable. Someone who can play both roles and he'll kick ass backstage with authority, even right after he's totally disrespected on stage. So Gary's value, I believe he is number 2 as far as the reason that this show has lasted as long as it has. Howard's obviously number 1, and I would put Gary at number 2.
Well, I couldn't agree with both of you guys more. I think Craig's point, those early years, you talk about being a quality guy. Gary took a drubbing and just understood the show, came back for more. And when you talk about favorite clips or iconic clips, perhaps Gary's on the list. And I think he's certainly been Howard's number one foil over the years. All right, let's move on to the second clip. I mean, just love the clip. Fits it perfectly. Howard dressing down Stuttering John for traveling with them to California for the premiere of Private Parts and charging the hotel an outrageous bill of laundry and beer and services. and Howard berating Stuttering John for taking advantage of somebody paying the bill. Gentlemen, he's a controversial figure in the Stern universe. Where do you see Stuttering John Melendez with Howard Stern?
Well, Stuttering John obviously has his own sort of legacy. I think it's been tarnished a bit over the years just because I think a lot of people sided with Howard in, they felt kind of betrayed about how he left and why he left and where he went. But what he did will always be there. And he basically, I think, he invented, or at least the show invented for him, a bit that has been now, that's copied every single day, 35 times a day at, where people ask people
Would you
weird
talk about
questions.
the celebrity crash interview?
Yeah, the celebrity crash interview or any crash interview at this point. But yeah, so his legacy is in stone. I just wish, just like him, and it ended so bitterly, like so many else's, and it hurts the way I remember things, But anyway, yeah.
Craig, where do you see Stuttering John?
I liked Stuttering John. I think he had his place and time in the show. I don't really think he's all that missed. I think his role he was funny. They utilized him well, and then I remember his act kind of, everyone knew it was coming with him, so they kind of had to replace him from that role when he would do all those, celebrity shock questions. And then I'm not sure how well he was utilized, meaning I think now, or since he's departed, I think better writers have come through. So, I think he had a place in time, and I think he was a good piece of the history. But, he left, he took on a new role. It clearly was something that didn't work out, and I don't know what he's done since.
Not much.
Yeah, so, I liked him, but I don't think, I think the show certainly moved on well since his departure. But, I look back on some of those interviews, and there's some good memories, and I do laugh, but, it's, he was just one of those guys, I think, that was, hate to say it, but replaceable maybe.
I agree. I think he left. It was bitter at first. Then I think they sort of came to an understanding, and Howard had Stuttering John over and the wife. And then it got real bitter over the last couple of years, and John's been sort of famous or infamous on these post-Stern podcasts for really mercilessly ripping Howard and the crew and a lot of accusations. So I think that sort of that relationship is shot. But I do think he has a firm place in Stern Show history, and I think, both your comments, I think he definitely played a key role, maybe a bit of a one-trick pony, but he did it super well. And beyond the crash interviews, I think he was just a great personality, because I think the way Howard painted it was he was a schnurrer. He took advantage.
Yeah.
He was the guy that went into the wet bar and charged $1,000, and and I love, Howard's dressing him down.
Yeah, but Howard was right. Howard was right that it's embarrassing for him, even if it's not about the money, but it also made for great radio. So
absolutely.
It's a lose-win in a way.
I've always felt like I'm the one guy that loved his interaction more than even the crash interviews. John was an interesting dude, interesting cat on the show.
Who replaced him with those crash interviews?
Gary Garver.
Yeah,
Gary Garver.
From
they
LA,
did Stuttering
right?
Vic for a while.
Yeah.
And then they did Gary Garver, and then Gary Garver crashed and burned. So
Yeah.
he's another guy who
Yeah.
sort of turned on Howard and
God.
post Stern Show. Interesting one. Howard and Billy West bust on Jackie during the news. We'll talk about Robin later on. The news obviously was a tentpole segment throughout the Stern Show years. Let's go to Billy West. Relatively short amount of time. Really maybe the first real solid impersonator. Voices brought an aspect to the show that was not there beforehand. Fellas, any thoughts on Billy West?
I mean, Billy West was a superstar. I mean, his
Agreed.
impersonations were hilarious and outrageous and shocking, and he was a real solid piece to that show. It was a short-lived run, But obviously the March shot is, it's it's just stuff that you just couldn't be doing today. But I guess my understanding, he's went on to continue to have.
You've had a very successful,
very successful, voiceover career, and that was a good little mini era in the show. He was a blast.
Group?
How long was it?
I think he was only on for a couple of years. What I know, he was on a radio show in Boston. He came in to observe Howard. I think Howard put him on the spot, did some voices. Howard liked him, brought him back. I think, unfortunately, like most of the Stern crew in the Stern universe, money was an issue, and he decided to leave. And funny enough, he did one segment when Howard went to Sirius, and they did sort of that whole best of package with Howard.
Mm-hmm.
Billy did like a Jackie voice, did a tape thing to Howard, but he's never spoke. I think Howard said he's pretty much zero-based him since he left. But anyway, Andrew, thoughts on Billy West?
Zero-based him, what does that mean?
Meaning he just no interaction, no comments. He's really
isn't that what Howard would probably want?
I think Howard has indicated, at least early in the Sirius run, if Billy would talk, I'd talk to him and we could try to get him back on the show. But clearly,
is there any Howard animosity?
Right, bitterness there?
I think the animosity is on Billy's side. I think that Billy felt like he didn't get paid, and I remember Billy's wife. She was, a strong component in his life, and probably pushed him and probably told him, take his bags and go. And he was already Ren and Stimpy, and he had he's had a bright future in the cartoon voice acting world.
Yeah, but he was the resident impressionist who had these recurring characters.
Amazing.
And it, you just looked forward to I'll give you one example. Like, I knew if I woke up in the morning that it was raining, I knew that Howard would be contacting the ghost of Sam Kinison. And because I lived in New York, so if it was raining on Long Island, it was probably raining in New York. When it was raining, he would use Billy West or somebody to contact somebody who had passed away, and Billy would be doing somebody. So that stuff was always great. So and like Craig said, Marge Shot is just you can't unhear that. Miss him, but like with everything, the show moved forward in a different direction, and I don't think it suffered because of it, but it makes you wonder what could have been if he hung around longer.
Well, a guy who did hang around a couple of years longer after Billy left, certainly an indelible mark in Stern Show history. Billy West, we got to go to Jackie the Joke Man Martling. We'll start off with you, Gru. Thoughts on Jackie the Joke Man?
Well, I definitely missed Jackie for a while. Without his departure, we wouldn't have gotten Artie. So it's sort of, you can't look back and say, I wish this didn't happen. It's another what if, because Jackie was sort of our stand-in. Like, Jackie and Fred were these two lusty guys sitting in the corner oogling about, everything that was going on and laughing at it, and just like the two people who are looking at each other like, I can't believe they pay us to do this. And that's what I loved most about Jackie. And his laugh was contagious. So I do miss that. But then when he left, it was interesting to see the different rotation of people who were going to take that spot. Ultimately went to Artie, who created some magical moments and had his own incredible run.
We'll hold off on Artie because we'll talk about him in a little bit.
But I do wonder what would have been if Jackie had stayed, and I don't see him doing much.
Craig, Jackie the Joke Man.
Jackie, we kind of got into the show a little bit in progress. Like, I wasn't, still a little young during the early NBC years. So it was sometime into some of the early run of K-Rock when we kind of took to the show. Jackie was the old guard. So it's kind of all we knew at first. Definitely, talk about a foil. He was a bit of a foil as well. Certainly,
certainly was.
Certainly the butt of a lot of jokes, and made fun of him and his lifestyle and his wife and his corny jokes. So it's kind of all we knew at the time until we didn't know it any longer. And I think, forget about talking about, I'm sure we've talked about it before, the unceremonious, departure. But, it kind of allowed the show to get younger. when he left and bring in some younger comics.
Interesting point.
Jackie was kind of an old, kind of a corny, almost like a Catskills type comic. And then when he left, I'm sure he was a strong writer and a big part of the show, but I did think creatively it probably allowed Howard to kind of spread out a little bit more. But Jackie was, was kind of the old guard, but it's just, I think the show evolved a bit in his departure. At the end of the day, I think the show was able to move in kind of in a better, newer direction. And it's like anything, when a TV show and when a major character leaves at some point, the show's strong enough to move on, or a sports team. So, but good memories and tons of old jokes on Jackie. Just how much longer maybe, could the show have gone on with the Nancy Sirianni and the joke world, the joke land humor, I don't know.
You mean there was a shelf life on the Sirianni
joke
hunt?
Think, right?
Yeah.
Think. So, I think it had a good run.
Interesting. That's an interesting take. I'll save my thoughts for Jackie after we talk about and Gru reiterated. So we have, what a great clip. I love this clip. Artie listening to Evil Dave PSAs. I'll give you my thoughts on Artie after I get everybody, but you just hear Artie's ebullient laugh, just so gregarious, loving it. We'll go to Craig Hassenbein first. You talked about Jackie leaving. Artie takes over the chair. Give us some quick thoughts on Artie Lang.
Artie's hilarious. Just a very funny man. And again, I think he brought in a younger energy to the show. He was a bit of a fanboy, or quite a bit, quite a big fan. I think he had an easy gig because my understanding, he wasn't a writer.
He was not a writer. He was a performer.
Kind of a performer and a character on the show. When Artie was on and he participated, he was, and I think you've said it before, he kind of was like talking on behalf of us and the fans, and he interacted well with the celebrities. Where Artie sometimes struggled was sometimes I found he was unprepared. And he would just kind of show up and sit in and chime in. And so it wasn't always such a success story with Artie because I think it could have been better.
Yep.
He could have been stronger. But generally speaking, very funny, added a lot to the show, had great interactions. I loved his little feuds with Eric the actor and with Alice.
Oh, the Alice clip is just tremendous.
There's just aspects to it that
all of them.
That he
there were plenty of them.
Brought a lot of humor and certainly a lot of, again, a younger energy and definitely a more creative, talented, comic timing to the show that maybe they hadn't had before. And he really wasn't kind of a straight man or a yes man to Howard. He just kind of, added his input and added his character. So he was very authentic.
As Howard liked to say when Norm Macdonald introduced him, I love out-of-control guys. Andrew Gruthius, thoughts on one Artie Lang?
Well, yeah, I think Craig said basically to sum it up, Artie was saying and acting in the same way that I would. And, that was his thing.
A man of the people?
Yeah. Well, at least a man of me.
No, I'm
like, yeah. He was like he's saying exactly what I would say in this particular situation. He's bored to death right now because he doesn't give a shit about Howard interviewing Jennifer Aniston, and that comes through. And I identify, of all the people in the room at that time, who do I identify with the most? Artie Lang, because I don't give a shit about Jennifer Aniston either, not on the Howard Stern show anyway. So that's just an example. But Artie represented us when Howard started moving in the post-divorce sort of direction and stuff, because when Howard was, before Howard got divorced, I know we're talking about Artie, but before Howard got divorced, he was a man of the people. He was us. He was our voice. Well, after he got divorced, started hooking up with the supermodels and married one. He moved in a direction that
was Beth
was
Stern
nothing.
Really a supermodel?
All right, whether or not
Ostrowski.
whether or not she was, I didn't know who she was until Howard started playing around with her. But my point is, once he started moving in the direction that he's obviously in now, Artie became our resident in that studio. And I do miss that from the show. That is something that is still, there's still a hole there for me.
Yeah, there's clearly always room for another voice. I liked Craig's take. I didn't ever really thought about, Artie or Jackie's departure, lending its show to an early, a younger sort of demographic. But Artie was a performer. Artie was a storyteller. So I think that's how he added, and he plus the everyman approach. Jackie was the joke writer. Jackie fed Howard such incredible one-liners.
Yeah.
I've always felt like the Jackie, Billy, that run was always the classic sort of era of the show for me. I never thought about that take about, Jackie leaving. Love the Artie. Thought the early serious run was, perhaps his best work. But if I had to pick one, I like Jackie. I thought Jackie. Now I've seen Jackie a lot. We've gone to Jackie shows as a comedian. Didn't really care for him too much as a comedian, but I thought his strength, being on the show and be able to write these incredible one-liners really quick to Howard, and Howard's delivery, and then the laugh in the background, that whole tapestry lent itself. I think that's sort of, for me, the classic era of the show.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Final clip, Joey Boots, photo bombing a live newscast, Howard Stern's penis, all that stuff, whether it's golf tournaments, screaming Baba Booey, hot mic moments, Family Guy, Saturday Night Live, Howard Stern mentions. Any thoughts on the extended universe of Howard Stern mentions in popular media?
I mean, it's always hilarious still. I mean, the kind of the golf teeing off is really, something that's gained a lot of traction. And to me, it's, that's hilarious. Any of those TV interruptions are incredible. All that stuff still works. And I think that still keeps Howard relevant. And I love how always, the newscasters, they always pin it on Howard, as if, and Howard's argument is, I don't put these guys up to it, they just do it. And I believe that to be true. And I think that's what's added a major, kind of just expansion to the element of Howard, just having these characters on his behalf continuously kind of represent him. And especially those news clips when they interrupt those, interrupt those, kind of on location.
And it's always serious with the weather, like a hurricane.
Some guy in the background.
Joey Boots, screaming in the background.
Yeah.
So that stuff I don't think still gets stale. I'd like to hear and see more of it. It's still, and I think Howard loves it. He continuously plays those clips.
Grew, what do you think of those mentions?
I can't add to what Craig said. Really, I feel the exact same way. It will never not be funny. And I can't get enough of it. So keep it going. I can't add to what he said.
Yep. All right, fellas, before we get to our top 5 iconic moments of the Howard Stern Show, it's 5 things we are talking about this week. It's nothing worthwhile, the week that was.
NWW Life Center presents Nothing Worthwhile, the week that was.
Thank you, Andrew. The week that was is brought to you by NWW Life Center. Begin a new you. Check out all of their medical weight loss programs at www.newulifecenters.com. Excuse me. Give them a call at 602-274-0068. Tell them Moody and Guru and Craig sent you and receive a big 15% off your first service. We want to thank Marie and Dr. Cynthia. Thank you to NWW Life Center. Well, I guess 60 Minutes blew my first article, but no secret here that the boss, Bruce Springsteen, is a major Nothing Worthwhile favorite. Stephen Van Zandt revealed during the latest Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony that E Street frontman Bruce Springsteen, 74, is, quote, in great shape amid his battle with peptic ulcer disease. Quoting Little Steven, we're going to come back stronger than ever in March. It was a very intense first 6 months of the tour, maybe our most intense ever. And so we're going to come back with the same intensity, and it's going to be great. Van Zandt goes on to say, we have a new Rolling Stone record, a new Beatles record. It just shows that people who work on their craft tend to last a while. Van Zandt remarks come a month after Springsteen, who was diagnosed with peptic ulcer disease in September, announced that he would be rescheduling the remainder of the 2023 tour dates. Over here on E Street, we're heartbroken to have postponed these shows. Read a statement on the Born to Run singer's Instagram on September 27th. We've been having a blast at our U.S. shows, and we're looking forward to more great dates. We'll be back soon. Love and God bless you all, Bruce. Last month, Bruce Springsteen went on to say that he was, quote, deeply sorry about the change in plans while appearing on Sirius XM's E Street radio show From My Home to Yours. Quoting Bruce, let me take a moment and thank my fans affected by our postponed shows for their understanding. I am deeply sorry, but this belly thing, despite my ability to laugh at it, it's been a monster and is still unfortunately rocking my internal world. So, guys, we had 60 minutes tonight. Sounds like the boss at 74 is ready to return to the main stage.
Yeah, thankfully. I mean, hopefully he's feeling better. But, I mean, I've been, I was a victim of a few of his rescheduled dates, and it were just, as I arrived, via flight in Columbus, Ohio, or as I was heading to Philadelphia, I chased Bruce as much as I can, only to get those cancellations. So, man, I got bummed out a few times.
Is that a bummer? Like, I'm really to travel to Columbus.
Oh, it's the worst. It was the worst. We were just excited, and us fresh legs off the plane, getting ready for checking into the hotel, getting ready to head to the pre-party, and then the text comes on your phone. No show tonight. I mean, it was bummer with a capital BU. And then, but we caught some great ones, and Gru joined me for the last night in Jersey, and it was certainly. I don't know where I'd rank it in kind of the annals, but it was a special one. So he'll come back strong, and he's not getting younger, but he looks great. And even on TV today, he looked great, and Steve looks great. So I think they'll come back with a ferocity, and we'll see some great shows. And he'll probably change it up a little bit from what we saw, the last time around. But seeing what we saw to close out the MetLife run this past September should get us all excited for what's to come. So Bruce will be back, and he'll be back strong.
Let me toss it to another major Springsteen fan, Andrew Gruthius.
Yeah, I mean, I have pretty much the same thoughts. I was fortunate enough to see that show with Craig in August. Was it August or September? It was September. Right around then.
Like September 3rd.
Yeah, and that was the last show that he did before he had to shut it down. And you and I, Evan, are booked to see the first show back. You got bumped as well.
Yes, I did.
Fortunately, it's going to be when I happen to be in Arizona for somebody's impending nuptials.
You just got noticed on the cancellation.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we did.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a good point. But I'm pretty sure we'll probably get the same tour, but maybe it was this thing that was holding him back a little bit that kept the static nature of the set list, and maybe he will open it up. I'm not expecting much deviation on the first night, but that's for any Bruce tour really. He plays it pretty safe, but I'm still looking forward to the return because it's never a dull moment. I'm looking forward to going with you and your brother and your beautiful fiancé.
I think that'll be Andrew's first ever Springsteen show.
And so
untrue. You and I went in.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm wrong.
You and I went in '92.
Oh,
yeah.
You might not remember.
He's like really. He's super excited for Billy and Stevie, and I'm like, no, come on.
Yeah,
leave me alone. I like Billy. Yeah. So,
but anyway. Yeah, very much to look forward to.
Yeah, I think at this point it's more about friendship and linking up with fans and community, maybe than even the set list, because of his advanced age and because maybe he's on the clock. The shows are even that more special, irregardless of set list. That's how I see it at this point.
I can't argue with that at all.
At 72, however old he is, it's just a special moment to be able to see him. And then to see him with friends, that's an even greater bonus.
Yeah. So,
all right.
Keep it going.
All right, guys, no secret that one Sylvester Stallone is another nothing worthwhile favorite. Sly got candid about losing his son, Sage, in his new Netflix doc, Sly. The Rocky actor's eldest son tragically died in 2012 at the age of 36 due to coronary artery disease. I always thought it was something different, but okay, that's what the documentary is saying. Sage appeared as a character on Rocky Balboa's son, Robert, in 1990's Rocky V, alongside his father, 77. In the movie, Robert felt cast aside as his father teaches boxer Tommy how to fight in the ring. Stallone admitted in the documentary how this plot line reminded him of his own real-life relationship with his late son. Quoting Sly, "Unfortunately, yes," he sighed when asked if the story idea drew inspiration from his life. Quote, "I tried to take something that actually is what I wish I had done in real life, but I wasn't able to do it in reality. And so quite often I would do it theatrically, magically. A lot of this is true, Stallone added. Unfortunately, you put things before your family. In addition to the present-day scenes, the documentary plays footage from the Rocky V premiere. Standing with Sage on the red carpet, Stallone says, there's a line in the movie, I remember this, I'm so glad he's born because now I can live through your eyes. That, I think, is what fathers look to their children for. It's an extension of a slice of immortality. As long as he's alive, your memory will always be alive, that you did something right. I mean, you hope for that. 2012? No. Or 12. 21? 12. Sage was found deceased in his apartment. 12. Yeah, I'm sorry, I had a typo there. Sage was found deceased in his apartment with his cause of death first being cited as an overdose of pills, but the cause was later determined to be from atherosclerosis. Sage was then shown to have no drugs present in his system except for a small trace of Vicodin. You take that as it may. Fellas, have you seen the Sly documentary? We did casually discuss it on Netflix. Thoughts on the documentary and perhaps particular to Stallone's comments on the passing of his son, Sage? I'll throw it to Gru first because he's already talked about it to me.
Well, my thoughts on the documentary are the same thoughts that I have about the coverage of Sage. There was not enough of either. Stallone is one of the biggest movie stars ever, and an hour and 25-minute documentary is not quite enough to cover, to get to what people may not know.
Did you like the documentary?
I did.
Because I did.
I did to a great extent. I really enjoyed every minute of it, but I kept thinking about, okay, but there's more there. And they just had to get to the next thing. And one of those things one of the things I really wanted to hear about was more about specifically his relationship with Sage and he's got another child who was Sage's, full brother. I would have wanted to hear about that and his marriages. There's a lot that I don't know about Stallone, and they really didn't hit any of those buttons in there. But what was there was expertly done. So I did like it. I just wanted more from both of those situations.
Craig, you're only on the show sporadically. Are you a Stallone guy? And did you get a chance to catch the documentary on Netflix?
I love Stallone. We grew up around his movies.
Sure did.
Been quoting First Blood with Gru all weekend. Did not see the documentary yet. I'm excited to watch it. So I don't have a lot of comments on it, but I'm sure just generally it's probably just a really difficult, sensitive topic for him. So, there's a lot we probably don't know for good personal reasons, I'm sure. But I'm excited to weigh in on it, in the future and, get to and check it out real soon. But Stallone's he's so talented.
Interesting guy.
So much work he's done. I mean, all the writing he's done, on most all Rocky films, and plus, this new series that I know that you guys laud about. I'm excited to also get involved with.
You think he's underrated in any way?
Well, listen, I've always said he touched upon something in Copland that moved me as a fan, and I don't think he really ever went back to it, or we've talked on even with Ryan, maybe he didn't have the confidence to go into some of the more pure acting kind of deals. Underrated. You hit me on the spot here. Underrated for his acting, maybe slightly. I mean, the guy's a giant. My question was going to be, is Netflix hitting on a formula where they could take some of these 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s powerhouses, give us a nice 2-hour, hour-and-a-half documentary and provide some additional content on their channel. They've done Arnold. Now they've done Sly. I mean, you think they're hitting on something here?
Well, yeah. I mean, they are producing good, well-made material about and with these, they're finding things to do with these still marketable entities. Stallone's Tulsa King was great, as we said. Documentary good. His Arnold's 3-part documentary I really thought was very well done. They did a TV show with him. I didn't see it. I know you did. You said you were underwhelmed by it, I think.
What was this now?
FUBAR. Schwarzenegger's TV show.
I didn't see it at all.
Oh, you didn't see it?
No, I have
Okay.
no interest.
All right. So, I actually do have interest. I just haven't had a chance to see it. But I do like seeing them,
But the
keeping
buzz on
these
it, if the
people.
buzz was strong, you would have watched it because you watched Tulsa King.
That is absolutely certain. But I do like that they're finding things, quality things, for these for guys like this to still do. I like that.
Expendables 4 was a piece of dog S.
Yeah, but part of the reason why is because Stallone was in it for about 2 minutes, and it's like doing Rocky without Stallone. Creed 3 was not a good movie. I mean,
oh please, we've already gone through this.
I know. I'm just saying. You compared it to Expendables 4, and
I compared what to Expendables 4?
I don't know. You brought up Expendables 4.
Yeah, I said it was a piece of dog ass. It wasn't a well received movie.
Right. Well, it wasn't well made. But also he had nothing to do with it other than he appeared in it. He wrote and directed the first 2, but then from 3 on, he's just been, I'll show up and do the stuff.
Yeah.
He needs to be creatively involved.
I'll take a little umbrage with the Creed 3 comments, but we'll save that for another podcast. All right, guys, you mentioned WWE. We know that they're now connected with UFC. Andy and I have talked about it a little bit. I'm a bit of a UFC fan myself. The UFC celebrated its 30-year anniversary at Madison Square Garden on Saturday, November 11th. They had a big card. And guess who made a shocking appearance in the house? None other than WWE bigwig Paul Triple H Levesque. We know all the celebrities that joined the UFC. We had former President Donald Trump, Kid Rock, Tucker Carlson, Bill Burr, and more. The UFC was UFC 295. Pay-per-view was the place to be. That marked their 30th year of combat sports history. At the post-fight press conference, UFC Dana White spilled the beans on the partnership with WWE under the TKO banner. When asked about sitting ringside with the game, White hinted at some major crossovers, quoting Dana White, "Listen, if there's something there, like Ronda Rousey going over there or Brock Lesnar coming over here, whether we were with them or not, if that's the case, we would do that stuff." White didn't stop there. He gushed about the fantastic relationship he has with WWE's top brass, Vince McMahon, and power couple Triple H and Stephanie McMahon Levesque. Quoting Dana White, "The relationship has always been incredible. It's not." That's a little bit of revisionist history. "Vince has been an amazing partner. I've always liked Triple H and Stephanie. So, yeah, we're having a good time with those guys." Gru and Craig, who knows what the future holds for these titans of the ring and octagon? Thoughts on the partnership and perhaps some crossovers between UFC and WWE?
I'm not sure I'd read anything into that yet. I think it's just people playing nice at the beginning of this merger. I don't think it's time to start crossing over things yet. I think this new brand has to get its traction and get all the pieces in place. I know WWE is switching TV things and there's some moving parts. So I wouldn't read anything into Triple H showing up at a UFC thing. I think it's just playing.
Craig
nice.
was yawning. I guess you're not too.
Right.
Not too.
He's had a long. This
It's
is
a long
the
weekend.
Hey,
Oh my
this is the
goodness.
toughest weekend of his year.
This is
Nah,
nonstop.
I'm only joking. Any thoughts on the UFC WWE merger?
It's an interesting merger. It's an interesting merger. You're taking sports entertainment and you're merging it with professional sports. What I like about it is that, it probably would continue to go down a route of still a more edgy, aggressive content as opposed to maybe talks of like a Disney merger or things along those lines.
Interesting
so
point.
I think, if you're a fan of the product, I think there's cause to be optimistic. That said, going into a bigger corporation, it's, sometimes there's other factors and red tape and changes and different methodologies and things along those lines. Having, kind of Triple H still at the helm is important. So we'll kind of see where it takes it. But I think, I think that's given the nature of who they're kind of going into business with, I think there is some cause to certainly be optimistic. But, Triple H is out there. I was watching an episode of Billions, and who was on it this season? Triple H. I don't know if you saw it. But
I was not aware of that.
I didn't see it. I knew about it, but I
they
didn't
did a
see
cool
it.
cameo. They were just like, dropping some WWE lingo in
The
there.
writer is a huge fan. The writer is.
Does Triple H get not enough credit for his business acumen? Because, he's definitely was perhaps a major force in this merger. And then we talked earlier about things like partnerships with Bad Bunny, Logan Paul, music star, social media star. I mean, he has definitely had a strong influence and have expanded the scope or the horizon of world wrestling entertainment.
You said it all. You can't argue with that. The answer is absolutely. It was stalled, really, for a while. It was hovering. And in the last 2 years, with Triple H really sort of known to be at the helm, about 2 years now?
Yeah.
2
WrestleManias.
It has been a constant, just upward slope. And it's just getting hotter.
Yeah.
And so I think he gets the credit he deserves. He's certainly one of the most respected men in the business right now.
Yeah. It's funny hearing your two comments. I think Andy's looking at it like as a fan. Craig certainly is talking even more about the whole business dealing, and I kind of agree. As a fan, I'm optimistic because they're both in the combat sports game. One scripted, one not. I think there's a lot of synergy there. In terms of crossover, like anything else, if it's thought out and done well, I'll be very happy to see it and very open to it. But I think for now, it's not going to be a major deal to see perhaps a UFC star sitting in the stands at a WWE event, and maybe vice versa.
Yeah.
So, cool stuff, guys. I don't know if you've heard this. This is pretty crazy. Jada Pinkett Smith has threatened legal action against Will Smith's former assistant, brother Bilal. Bilal recently claimed he walked in on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Will Smith, 55 years old now, having sex with actor Dwayne Martin in a dressing room years ago. Hours after the claims made a headline, Jada, 52, told TMZ last Wednesday, "We suing." It's unclear if Pinkett Smith was serious about consulting her lawyers, but a source told TMZ that Will is actually weighing his legal options. I believe he came out and unequivocally denied this statement. Quote, "The story is completely fabricated and the claim is unequivocally false." Brother Bilal appeared on the Unwind with Tasha K podcast and alleged that he opened the door to Dwayne's dressing room and he saw Dwayne having anal sex with Will. Yee! Over the couch at the time. My gosh. Martin, who has yet to address the claims, was married to actress Tisha Campbell, from Martin, from 96 to 2020. Jada and Will, I mean, they're all over the headlines for, her book. They're separated. They're reconciling. While promoting her memoir, Worthy, last month, she hit back at multiple rumors about the pair that may have come up over the course of their relationship. When Today host Hoda Kotb asked whether they're in an open marriage, are swingers, or if one of them is gay, Pinkett Smith simply replied, "I would say that none of that is true." During the bombshell-filled promotional tour, she also revealed that she and Will have had completely separate lives since 2016. Boys, a bunch of famous boys taking part in some gay hijinks. True or false? What are your thoughts?
The whole where there's smoke,
there's anal.
fire. Yeah, you can certainly throw that into the mix. This whole Jada stuff.
It's getting a bit much, right?
I'm not sure she's doing him any favors.
She's not doing him any favors.
Stuff that
She's not doing herself any favors. She's not doing their children. She's poison. This is poison.
After the incident that happened at the Oscars, obviously. I don't know who's helping him with his damage control since then. My opinion on what happened in the Oscars was something that, you could recover from. And she certainly just has not helped him through this process. The Hoda stuff was cringeworthy and painful to watch. And now this stuff, who knows? Certainly wouldn't surprise me.
All right, Gru?
Get off TV.
She's all over the place, and she's got.
What are you going for here? Yeah. I'm uninterested.
I agree with both of you. She's not helping. She's not helping her guy. Yeah. Finally, guys, the grandest OG of them all, Snoop Dogg, announced on Instagram Thursday that he is seemingly giving up smoking. Quote, "After much consideration and conversation with my family, I've decided to give up the smoke," he said alongside a black and white picture of himself Please respect my privacy at this time. Some believe Snoop, born Calvin Codazar Brodus Jr., was trolling his fans and planning to indulge in edibles instead. I feel like this is a joke, wrote a doubter. Waiting on the psych, added another one. Snoop's love for weed has been well known throughout his career. Snoop Dogg also bragged about smoking all over the world, including the White House. Craig Grew, are you ready to pick up the mantle of one smokeless Snoop? I really grew. But anyway.
What do you mean?
Nothing. Go ahead.
How dare you?
How dare me?
Yeah.
Oh, is this on?
It sounds like he's serious and good for him. It sounds like he's doing it for, he's switching to edibles so it doesn't affect anybody else around him. As far as like smoke or whatever. No?
Yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts on Snoop?
I guess this just means now Seth Rogen is now the
he's
the
the
go-to for all
weed
things
smoker?
smoking.
He's passing the joint
Is he gonna
down.
pass the mantle? Yes.
I don't
He's
know.
passing the bong to.
I don't know how important a storyline that is. Interesting. But,
I'm just vamping for content.
Interesting. But he's always been kind of associated with that, or maybe since smoking has become less of a rebellious activity, because it's
unless he's got
legalized
edibles
most
to
places
sell
and more commonplace. Maybe that's inspired the removal.
Well, I think Snoop was never a casual smoker. He was an indulger, and I think it shows. He probably smoked since he was in his teens, and he's probably in his 50s. And just my opinion, there could be a price to pay for that kind of heavy indulgence over the years. And maybe he wants to be sober and maybe a little more clear-headed and focused. And if that's the case, good for him. If he's going to edibles, I guess good for him too. We had the clip from Ric Flair from Tony Hinchcliffe, podcast last podcast.
Yeah.
If you want to see an amazing comedy, go to watch on YouTube the Snoop Dogg roast, and Tony Hinchcliffe gets up there and does 10 minutes on Snoop, and it's brilliant.
I think
brilliant
I remember
stuff.
this,
but
the
only white guy in the room,
again.
and it's just brilliant.
Yeah, I think I have to see
stuff.
it. I think I have to see it.
All right, guys, fellas, today's Nothing Worthwhile podcast, top 5 iconic moments of the Howard Stern Show, is sponsored by Cape and Willow. It's our good friend Kelly Jo. She's the proprietor and decided to create the brand after years of crafting. She is sharing her passion of turning gifts via orders at the persistence of family and friends. The main focus of Cape and Willow is to take memories and turn them into custom-made creations that will last. Mediums of wood, acrylic can be generated, as well as vinyl, which is used for wearable gear. Check them out, Cape and Willow on Instagram, Facebook, and capeandwillow.com. Give Kelly Jo a call at 617-895-7116. Email her at kellyjo@capeandwillow.com. All right, fellas, we're going to now get into our list, top 5 iconic favorite moments of the Stern Show. Before we get to that, do we want to go over any honorable mentions that did not make, let's try to keep it to maybe 2, 3 at the most. Anyone want to break in and give us?
Yeah, I'll give you 3. I'll give you 3 quick ones.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Did not make your top 5.
Did not make the top 5, but were considered. The O.J. Peter Jennings call.
Great clip.
Now I don't know how you feel about this, but the 9/11 show live.
I mean, legendary broadcast.
Yeah. And the Artie vs. Teddy melee. Those are 3 moments that defined certain things for me that almost made my top 5, but didn't.
Any comments on Gru's?
Yeah, those are good ones. Those are. I just recently saw the Teddy Artie feud was highlighted on a recent documentary. That was that was.
You talking about the dark side of comedy?
Yeah,
it's a good episode.
But yeah, those are all memorable moments for sure, without a doubt. I had a few honorable mentions because as I was kind of going through it, I'll just rattle them off as well. I remember the historic Morton Downey Jr. slugging Stuttering John.
Legendary.
Was so good.
Legendary.
It angered me so much. I was struggling with this because I couldn't really find it, but during that core of the Private Parts movie run was just, it was hard to kind of pinpoint a certain moment because there was so much going on. So just generally, that's kind of my honorable mention because I couldn't really recall, an exact moment, but that was just such an exciting era in Howard Stern.
Great time to be a fan.
Yeah, in Howard Stern history. And I remember in my early days of commuting on the Long Island Railroad and Howard in a bloodthirsty feud with Mancow Mueller.
Yeah, that was.
And then when he finally took him out, and they had kind of the funeral, that goes in my honorable mention category. Another really great kind of edgy time in the Stern, kind of history.
What was a more exciting time as a fan? Was it Private Parts or Howard's run for New York governor? Because I think I was more excited for his run as New York governor. Those were some legendary moments. David Peel, the backstage wrangling. We got some real, for a guy who I was so young, not into politics, Howard really talking about the backroom deals with the Libertarian Party, picking the vice president, the assistant mayor candidate.
I'm going to save my comments on that one.
On my end, probably the movie stuff, only because
it was such an listen. You can't deny. I was
we went to the premiere,
and then I went to an early screening down in Florida. It was in like a van, and we had to do a test marketing. I mean, I was all over. I remember. I took I took off early that day from work. I mean, I just was all over it.
Two things. First, with the governor stuff, I always knew that was a work, that was a ruse, because when the push came to shove,
he was going to fade out. He wasn't
like, I'm going to withdraw. So, and he withdrew pretty abruptly. So he sort of it was funny at the time, but he sort of wasted our time with it because he didn't follow through.
Okay.
The movie stuff was exciting. I remember working downtown, and there was literally like a coach bus, a Howard Stern Private Parts coach bus, and you can go on the bus and watch a 3-minute clip of the movie.
Must have been the same thing.
There was just so much, there was so much excitement kind of attached to that. So I'll go Private Parts movie any day of the week.
All right, I'll give you my 3. I'll let you guys comment. I've said it. I've been very clear. It's not a legendary moment by any stretch, but I've said the Paul McCartney 2001 interview was the jump the shark moment. Howard finally got that celebrity guest that he always wanted, and I just feel like that was an early taste and perhaps shaped him for that back end of the serious run. The 9/11 broadcast. Howard lasted till 12:15 p.m. I was teaching, and we were told not to have our radios and televisions on, and I kept my radio on ever so slightly right by my desk so I could just hear Howard's take on everything, and took us through the range of emotions, certainly as our home city was attacked. And, of course, Gary becomes Baba Booey, makes a mistake on a pronunciation, and clearly that nickname has probably been one, if not the most synonymous with the Stern Show.
Yeah.
Those are, one of ours is the same, but the other two are, you're right. And by the way, what we're talking about they don't have to be positive.
No,
things.
It's all for interpretation.
Yeah.
No,
So.
of course. Yeah, no, the Baba Booey one is ageless and timeless, and that you kind of hear that popping up often enough, kind of on 101. It's just hilarious.
When Howard goofs on Mona Lisa, and he goes the Momo, it's just and that was Howard's talent. You give him an inch, he's going to take him out.
Gary back then, he had that real Long Island, Delphi University accent,
big mustache with food and tobacco and just.
Oh my goodness, great.
All right, let's let's start off with our special guest, Craig Hasselbein. Craig, give us your number 5 on your list.
My number 5. Okay, that makes sense to me. So we'll work backwards on my list because I numbered them 1 through 5. My number 5 would go to the penultimate terrestrial radio episode when Jackie Martling made his long-awaited special guest appearance return. We didn't know if it was ever going to happen and how it would feel because obviously there was so much negativity attached with Jackie and how he walked out on the show year after year over his contract dispute and finally reached a point where he walked out and Howard and team were just going to kind of no longer continue to fight the battle and move the show in a new direction, which I guess probably left Jackie surprised, and we kind of know the story a bit. But I remember that episode being really excited. There was a lot of build-up to it. It was a way to kind of say farewell to the terrestrial radio era because Howard was going to and yes. I remember he checked in, and Artie's like, take my seat. And Jackie's like, no, I don't want to do it. And then he was like, hi, Fred. because I guess him and Fred were hadn't spoken since the breakup, because I think those two had a lot of negative energy.
Fred took it hard,
even in that episode. And then I remember in that show, Jackie it was kind of a revelation episode for Jackie, because he mentioned that he was separated from Nancy, and he wasn't drinking or there were anymore. There looks like there was a lot of kind of changes in Jackie's life, and he kind of took the position that leaving the show ended up being good for him. But it was very nostalgic. There was a lot of kind of F Jackie moments, back after a long hiatus from that. So it was really a nice way to kind of put a bow on the terrestrial radio. I consider the K-Rock era of the Howard Stern show. So to me, that was a special show, and a show that I remember being really, really excited to tune into.
I'll comment first. I think that's a great choice, but I was already in Florida, and so that final show, I don't know, maybe because I wasn't in New York, it didn't feel, it was definitely, I remember listening and trying to listen as much as I can because I was teaching, and I don't know, for some reason it didn't hit me. Perhaps maybe if I was still in New York, I know it was a big deal, and it would, outside, and they had the speeches outside as they moved to Sirius. But I think that's a great choice, and I didn't know that Jackie revealed a couple of things on that final broad. That was very, very interesting. Gru, what do you think of Craig's choice?
I think it's a good choice. It's it's not on my list because I think the same thing you said. It didn't hit me.
Was it because we knew he was going to be on satellite?
There was just it was interesting what happened at the next
I was more interested for that first satellite broadcast.
Yeah, Jackie coming back didn't generate the excitement to me that it should have. I don't know why. It's
overall Howard's last terrestrial broadcast too.
Yeah, I just I don't know, but it is a good choice because I remember it being a very solid show, and you really felt the old chemistry there, especially between Jackie and Fred.
I did like how Howard ended it. Yeah, I do like how Howard had each member of the team leave, go downstairs, and do a.
Well, wasn't that the final episode?
Okay, so this is
This was the second to last
all right,
one.
My bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the final episode was something else. It's not on my list, but that's where I would have gone if I was going in that direction. But that was a spectacular show too, in a time when the shows were not that great for reasons that Howard left.
Yeah.
So good choice.
Andrew, why don't you go to your list? Why don't you give us your number 5?
Okay, a very simple one. The first time I ever heard the great Howard Stern game, my favorite Howard Stern game, Mystery Guest. And the one that I chose, the first time I ever heard it, the Sammy Hagar Mystery Guest.
One. It's not even close.
Mystery Guest game, the reveal of that and Howard's ambivalence, knowing that this is a guy the last time Yeah, go ahead.
So can I ask Craig, do you remember Howard's reaction when do you remember that episode? And do you remember Howard's reaction when it was revealed to be Sammy Hagar? What Howard said in the studio?
No, you got to take me back a little bit on that.
So I think Howard was always a pro David Lee guy, and really, when Van Halen broke up, he just really was reckless in his criticism of Sammy. Obviously, he's changed his tune over the last years, but when it was revealed to be Sammy, what did he say in the studio?
Well, because he said it in the book. He said in the book Private Parts, when he did the Fart Man thing at the MTV Awards, Sammy Hagar had been interviewed about it. He's like, he ruined the whole show. I'll kick his ass if I ever see him, blah, 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 blah. And then the moment Howard realizes it's Sammy Hagar, he's like, I got to get out of here. He's going to kick my ass.
Yeah, he's going to kick it. I remember him saying that.
And it was a great interview. And it was just, the tension that was in there in the beginning, you could feel it dissipating as time went on. And it was just a very special show to me. And I love listening to that moment of the reveal of who it is. And as he starts to realize who it is, it's great stuff.
genius of Howard. I mean, I remember him saying basically, "Oh, you're in the studio. I'm a huge Sammy fan. Screw David Lee." Like he just completely changes his tune because the guy's sitting right in front of him.
It's absolutely
He's like,
hysterical.
Sammy, when you're here, I'm your number one fan. When David Lee Roth is here, I'm his number one fan.
That's it. So yeah, that's my number 5. I love it.
My number 5, mine was in a real different vein, but I decided to go with the Howard family tapes that set forth the dominant narrative that Howard's parents were overbearing and maybe even a little nuts. I told you not to be stupid, you moron. It's perhaps become one of the more famous drops in Fred North's arsenal. I think, years later, it's debatable as to how bad Howard really had it as a kid. I don't think it was so bad at all. But clearly, it was all emphasized as listeners because our parents were all a little bit nutty, too. So for my number 5 was the Howard Stern family tapes.
Well, you're talking about something that has generated the audio drops that have lasted and will last as long as there's a Howard Stern radio show. I told, like you said, don't be stupid, and that will always shut up, sit down. It'll always be there. The megaphone thing, whatever. I mean, it's that whole idea just became. It was another reason why Howard became so big.
Relatable.
His personal life was becoming a part of the show. So that's as iconic. That's as iconic as anything else. So it's a great choice.
Any thoughts on the family?
Yeah, it's hilarious and funny and shocking the first time we heard it, but also, like you said, relatable. He grew up in probably a pretty relatable household to our lives, and kind of the strict, hardworking dad. I mean, that's shut up, sit down, and then testing.
Yeah.
It's great material. And as Gary would say, it still holds up.
All right, why don't we go to number 4? We'll go to Groove first on this one. Andrew, what's your number 4 Stern Show moment?
Okay, this is one of my favorite moments from I don't know exactly when it is, but I think it's the early Sirius days when Howard sends Gary to his
I know already.
to his apartment.
Gru has loved this episode.
Because Howard was afraid. Howard had, let's just say, he took care of himself the night before, and he forgot if he flushed the evidence down the toilet.
Toilet paper,
the toilet paper that he used. And he had his maid coming over that day and was embarrassed for his maid to find it. So he literally, on the air, sends Gary to run over to his house. He's got Gary on the phone, and Gary's going up, and he's checking. He's like, "There's nothing here. There's nothing here, Howard." He's like, "Oh, thank God." That whole, bit, whether it was a bit or not, who cares? It was what I really thought the show was going to be. And it was just one of my favorite. It seemed very spontaneous.
Yeah, and it shows you again the brilliance of Gary Dell'Abate.
Yeah,
just to roll with the punches.
Yep.
And don't worry about your title or your age. You're going to go to your boss's house and look for tissues full of jism. Really good stuff. You familiar with that episode?
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, it goes back to like what we were saying earlier, where Gary's character certainly has evolved a bit, and we probably don't see him participating in such antics today.
No,
but Gary as well, took it well, and Gary does have good comedic timing, and I think his role was played well in that. I mean, I remember it vaguely, but I do remember it, and that's and it's also stuff that, like you showed us early on, that this are more the boundaries that they're going to be able to kind of break a bit and go through being on satellite. So that was kind of an early example of it. So that's a funny one.
That is a great clip. All right, guys, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on my number 4. My number 4 is the Scott the Engineer push-up competition. Contains my favorite Scott the Engineer drop. I told you not to use the tape. Out of here! Out of here! As he screams at one Mike Ganji. It was really the first post-Jackie Martling event. And I remember being super interested because Jackie was gone. And how are they going to fill this space? And really, it was one of the first times you heard an employee be defiant on the air to Howard. where Scott pushed back on the judge who was. And by the way, I've watched the clip on YouTube. Scott's push-ups are weak as hell and should not have been allowed. But Scott, you're gonna pay me, and everybody's screaming, and the audience was. He had Ralph and Wayne and all the players. His friends and family were in the studio, and Dominic Barber and the whole deal. But to me, the definitive Scott the Engineer moment, if there needs to be one. And so my number 4 is the Scott the Engineer push-up competition.
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, it really, because there was a lot of build-up to that. That coming Scott was like training and
Radu,
kind of going
remember the trainer Radu?
But he clearly did not accomplish the task at hand, and was an emphatic sore loser, and really kind of painted a real negative picture of him. I mean, I certainly didn't come out of that episode being a greater fan of Scott, and all the kind of whether fun or not fun, or within the kind of the storyline of the show or not, all the kind of the business that he got on that given day. I mean, I think they ended up kind of caving and just giving him what
I think he
wanted.
did end up paying. To Howard's credit, he paid Scott the Engineer.
Which I was kind of like bummed about. I mean, at first it would have been funnier not to pay him because he didn't do it. But the reactions were natural. It was an outrageous episode for sure.
Okay. Craig, give us your number 4.
My number 4. Okay, let's go here. My number 4 is a little interesting. I remember it took me back, and maybe... I remember hearing this. You had mentioned the McCartney being like his big get, and I agree because that's kind of an A-lister for sure. But there was an interview that he had earlier on in his run, going back to the K-Rock days, with a comedic actor that we loved in Rodney Dangerfield.
Ooh, okay.
Rodney Dangerfield's a superstar, but this particular interview, and Rodney now was already kind of established. It might have been when he was promoting maybe that kiddie soccer movie. Whatever it is.
Ladybugs.
And it was kind of a dark-toned interview. So I thought it was sort of kind of maybe a precursor to how Howard would become an interviewer in more present days. It was a lot of Q&A about Rodney's kind of late ascent to fame, not having a happy childhood or maybe an abusive home for what I remember. But the big takeaway was kind of out of nowhere, his animosity towards Jackie Martling, and saying, "Jackie, I think you still, I think you still owe me some money or something, but that's all right. I don't need the money." And Jackie's like, "I paid you in jokes. Yeah, I really need your jokes, Jackie." And it was a lot of Rodney humor in going at Jackie, but it was dark and it was serious, and it was. I think Howard fell onto something pretty successful in that interview. It was a dark Rodney, and he clearly had animosity towards Jackie, and it came out pretty strong in that show. And pay you with jokes. That's something I
only Jackie could.
I never knew there was such currency.
Please don't defend Jackie.
I'm not defending Jackie. I'm just saying that's not unheard of. It's not. I won't say uncommon. I'd say. Not unheard of. I have heard of it's not comedians who sell jokes. It's scam artists or writers who are afraid to be comedians who sell their jokes to people. So they do that.
Didn't Jackie always have kind of one toe in the scammy world?
Absolutely. I'm not defending him. I'm just saying it's not like he's the only one who would ever do that.
So I think Craig's example, and we've talked about this. Yeah, I mean, Rodney perhaps was an A-level guest, though I feel he lived in the B-level world. But what I loved about Howard's interviews back in the day, before he became the world's greatest interviewer, debatable, but was he took every interview so seriously, whether it was a porn star, hacky comedian. I always talk about his interview with Christopher Cross, who was well past his prime, and Howard got him in there. And one of my favorite, admitting that he had a mentor because he was like a foster child, and this guy named Al Glasscock mentored him, and Howard just jumping all over this and actually getting Al Glasscock in the studio, next week with Christopher and getting those actually real emotions. But I think that was the greatness of Howard's interview. He took everything B-level, A-level, porn star so seriously and wanted to delve into those underpinnings.
Yeah. It was business.
That's a good
It
one.
was ratings.
Yeah,
it was.
I remember
Yeah.
him being really legitimately angry with Jackie the Joke Man.
Yeah. Reminded me of Pat Cooper.
All right, so I think who's up? Am I up for going first?
Whoever.
All right,
Go
well
ahead.
I'll go number one, and we'll send it to Craig next. For my number 3, I think this is the definitive Artie situation. We mentioned the Teddy fight, but I think even more indicative of Artie is the Howard Artie the Bro fight. And I think if you remember, that was for me as a fan, the first open cracks in the Stern Empire, heard clearly on the air. Artie was a plump guy. He was a big guy, and he clearly did not like being fodder for an on-air segment in which Howard claimed to have set him up with a woman who was into chubby guys and was into fat guys, and Artie was clearly miffed. He challenged the king of all media on the air, who said he did it for his friend because he was a bro, and Artie shockingly stated right on the air, we ain't bros. And then Howard and Artie had this back and forth. They had a real tenuous ending. And I think by the next day it was patched up. But I remember really being glued to my radio and Artie telling Howard, we ain't bros.
Yeah.
And calling him out, saying we don't talk off the air. We don't really socialize beyond, the studio, and whether that was true or not, I don't know. But I remember that's a fascinating clip. Guys, Artie Lang, the bro fight.
Well, looking back, it makes more sense than it did then. Now, doesn't it? So yeah, I remember
Did it
that.
foreshadow, you think?
Well, in hindsight, yeah. At the time, when they said, "Oh yeah, everything's cool," you believed it. But as time would slowly creep on, you would, like you said, that was the first crack in the empire. And as time would go on, he'd have times when he'd disappear for a couple of, he became a little less interested in doing quality work.
The Teddy fight's a good one, but Artie's just clearly out of control and clearly on drugs. And this one, I think, is because you remember what he said to Howard. He said, well, what if I had a woman who's into geeky pelican looking, and like you hear Fred laugh in the background and like Robin laugh, and it was really the first time somebody really called him out, like in a real tangible level on the air, and Howard was, a little stumbly. Let me throw it to Craig. Craig, what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that, and it was almost as a listener, you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It just goes to maybe some of my points earlier that Artie was just unpredictable, and maybe unpredictable.
I definitely agree with that.
In a negative way. I mean, in this case, it made for good entertainment, so it kind of played well. But if you're Howard, you got this guy's a little bit of a loose cannon, and whether it was substance related, who knows? I mean, you could probably make the argument that it probably was, but that was interesting to say the least, and it wasn't the first time we'd see kind of Artie having kind of an unpredictable personality. So it was certainly interesting, and I agree, it's not something you see very often. And anyone that's kind of lashed out at Howard or tried to make fun of him have certainly been, has gotten it back pretty hard. I think Howard was a bit taken aback by that, and that's a memorable one for sure.
I'm super enjoying. I'm actually so interested to hear everybody's take on each other's predictions.
Yeah.
So why don't we throw it to Craig? Give us your number 3.
My 3 is a recent one, from a very recent one.
Ooh.
And we talked about it, and we right after it happened, it was the ultimate get for him. We waited. I didn't think it would ever going to happen, because of how outrageous Howard's been over the years and in addressing this particular artist. But he probably softened over the years in lauding seeing him live and going to the theater. So it was the Bruce Springsteen interview, which it was just the ultimate get. And, it was probably for the most part a relatively safe interview, but it was 2+ hours of one of the most sought-after interviews that are probably out there. The guest himself, Bruce, was extremely gracious. It returned Howard to the studio, which was unheard of at the time, and is still something that's not an often occurrence whatsoever. So that alone was pretty cool and special. But just from being a Springsteen fan that I am, there wasn't much in that interview that was revealed that maybe we haven't heard before or didn't come out in his book. But there were a few things that were thrown in there that we haven't heard before. A conversation about his first wife, a mention with regards to also some of the struggles Bruce may have with some mental health. And then beyond that, just the live performances were just, it was a dream set list. So it was just a special moment in Stern Show history, and one of those episodes that you waited and couldn't wait to tune into. And it delivered, and it was a spectacular interview. And being a Springsteen fan that I am, I was certainly proud of Bruce for what he gave to that interview, and Howard was great. And there was a little bit of a repartee into some of the old days when Howard was a little more outrageous and picked on Patty and things along those lines. So it was highly entertaining. And again, I think that ultimate get that I didn't think was ever going to happen.
What do you think, Gru?
Well, it was a spectacular show. I both listened to it and watched the HBO Max thing of it. The everything Craig said is true. The only reason, and I did think about it, and the only reason that I didn't really consider it for this is because it didn't change the trajectory of the show. It didn't change anything about the show. It changed some things on Bruce's end, but not
got
so
Howard
much
into the studio.
Yeah, well, with the exception of that, I was going to say it got Howard into the studio again, but it just didn't, and it wouldn't have. Like, it could have been the greatest interview in the history of all interviews, and it wouldn't. I didn't expect it to change the show, but regarding what Craig says, it was an absolute incredible get and an incredibly entertaining, 2.5 hours, unprecedented in a way. So, great stuff, just doesn't fit in with my other criteria here.
Yeah. A lot of thoughts on that. I can't put anything past 2013 as legendary, iconic. Don't disagree with the get. I think Howard's somewhat as masquerading as a Bruce Springsteen fan. I think he's really late to the game. I think the most interesting thing about the interview for me was the revelation about, singing to Clarence Clemens on his deathbed. Yeah. That touched me. Nothing else did. And actually, Howard going into the studio angered me because as a fan, I wanted him back in the studio every day, having that repartee with the people and his team, because I think that makes for a better show. So having him come in, especially for Bruce, I thought it might showed the laziness or I don't know what the right word is, and I think it shows, perhaps a little bit of the divide on how we see Howard, post 2013 as well. But that being aside, I think everyone agrees it wasn't I don't think it was an earth-shattering interview. I do think that one reveal was really, and that did touch me quite a bit. But didn't change much for me. That's how I feel. If I'm to be honest.
Yeah, I'm kind of right in the middle of both of you on this one.
Yeah. All right. Well, Andrew, why don't you give us your number 3?
Okay, number 3. This was the moment or the interview that more than any other time made me feel like I was part of the show, because everything that was coming out of Artie's mouth, whether it was a sigh or a word or a thing, was exactly what I was thinking. And this was I don't know the date, but it was, I want to say 2008 or 9, somewhere around there.
I know exactly.
This was, you've pre-guessed every single one of mine. The Howard's interview with Wilder Valderrama, when Wilmer was just revealing to himself, to everybody, like all the different famous women he has
bedded over the years,
and for each one, Artie was reacting like more and more, just amazed, like, who the hell is this kid? Like he didn't like he really had no idea who he was, and be like, and so Wilmer Valderrama would be like talking about like, yeah, so when I went out when I slept with Lindsay Lohan, and all of a sudden from the back you'd hear, wait, you fucked Lindsay Lohan? And then that kept building and building and building. And I remember exactly where I was. I was parked on the side of the street in Tribeca, waiting for my boss. You all know who my boss was. Yeah. And I was listening to this live in the morning, just cracking up at Artie and how he's reacting to this. So, yeah, number 3 is Artie and Wilmer.
So funny you mentioned it, because I think Rolling Stone did an article about how this was probably one of the most inappropriate, they're doing one of those reflective pieces and kind of bashing Howard. No, I mean, I think I remember it. I remember laughing with you. Clearly, this interview cannot go down in 2023.
Oh, forget about it. I'm surprised they're not taking them to test today.
Craig, you familiar with the
yeah,
welder?
for sure. I think it goes to my kind of comment earlier that I think that was a time where Artie was clearly unprepared and sitting in the studio as just a listener as we would, and probably it sounds like he didn't even know who this actor, the sitcom actor was at the time.
That is what I liked about it, though.
So yeah, I mean, from that aspect, it seems like he rolled out of bed and then saw this, this guy on the couch and just kind of started chiming in a bit. So probably a little disrespectful to the guest also at the same time, from what I remember. But, I agree with the sentiment, and I laughed a lot because, I didn't, it was definitely, kind of typical Artie kind of, one thing I've always said to Artie, he just kind of chimes in a lot.
That was a criticism a lot of the fans didn't like Marianne from Brooklyn would constantly, he would talk over Howard, no rhyme or reason. Let me ask you a question. Craig's comment about Artie not being prepared. Does he need to be prepared before a Wilder Valderrama interview or
Of course he does. Yes, he has a responsibility.
Do you think Robin prepares?
A job. Yes, I do. I think she's a pro. That doesn't mean I like her.
Didn't ask about that. Right. If they need to prepare.
But Craig is right. They need to be prepared. And just because
his sciatica kicking in. All right.
And just because the unpreparedness makes for great comedy doesn't excuse the unpreparedness. So I do agree with Craig on that.
Yeah, that's definitely a unique. The Wilder Valderrama interview is definitely a unique one. All right, Gru, why don't you open us up with your number 2?
Okay, my number 2 comes from I should have researched dates on these, but it's from the 94. You'll know when it was. It was from the 94-95 era. And it really made me realize how much of a force the Howard Stern show was. I'm
excited to hear this.
Yeah, it really showed me. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. And I'm like, I got to start really listening to this show. And that was the John DeBella coming into the show, apologizing, begging to work, and then having a live press conference where Penny Crone was reduced to tears.
Over what, though?
She had asked something about does he hold Howard somewhat responsible for the death of his wife, his ex-wife or whatever? And he got angry and he pointed at her. And that made her start crying.
Oh, Penny
and
Crone.
Howard just started making fun of her already. But that whole thing from the preamble, playing the clips from before, because I had never heard DeBella before. I didn't know who he was.
A Philly guy,
right?
Yeah.
But I didn't know that. And they're playing this guy, and they're doing it like the WWE does it. They're telling the story of what this whole thing means. And then in comes DeBella, and before he says a word, I know exactly who he is and know exactly what's about to happen. And that whole show was absolutely stunning radio to me, and it changed my view of Howard Stern forever. And I think it changed the show too.
Okay, so my question to you is: you used a wrestling analogy. Did that solidify Howard as the Hulk Hogan or Vince McMahon of morning radio, shock jock radio?
Is from my perspective.
I mean, DeBella had to ask Howard.
But hadn't that happened before?
I'm not aware of it. And Howard's take on it was, he was being gracious and he would not deny anyone employment. But I don't believe.
But he demanded that he come and ask.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but the whole thing before that, like Captain Jenks going out with DeBella's wife, and then
He did
DeBella's
like a dial
wife,
date, right?
Yeah, committing suicide. Just there was so much baggage in that studio for that whole thing, and it showed me what a mammoth machine this Stern show was.
So my take always with the DeBella stuff was them listening to a local news Philly clip and DeBella very smarmingly dismissing Howard, like, he doesn't do what I do, and he's not in Philly.
He is an act.
Yeah.
We do a show.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to that going, I think you're putting a whole world of trouble on yourself there, DeBella. Craig, any thoughts on the whole DeBella saga?
I was in Syracuse at the time. I remember specifically the Penny Crone stuff because she was like probably like a Channel 5.
Yeah. She was a field reporter.
Field reporter on the streets all the time, and her being reduced to tears. And then it reminded me many years later when she was working
Howard
on the news show, and she was reduced to tears for something that
always crying.
And Howard just gave her such a hard time.
I just think it was also hilarious that he hired her to begin with. So I remember her being kind of more so prevalent with her because I was just more aware of her. I wasn't all that aware of DeBella. During that time as much, but I do remember that and her role in it specifically. It was entertaining.
All right, guys, I'll give you my number 2. Curious to hear your thoughts. Howard announces his divorce. If I remember correctly, Howard announced through Dan Flores, the PR guy, in Newsday. I believe it was on a Sunday. I remember, I don't know if the local news, they were talking up Howard's separation or divorce. And I could not wait for Monday morning show. I remember Howard opened up with the lines, "Broads, please line up at the at the station," with Jackie Martling laughing, cackling in the background. And while looking back on it, Howard, it was a short run, but Howard reinvented himself sort of as a celebrity single guy, kind of out of control. I think he got back a little bit to the dirtier, edgier roots for a while. Before sort of, reinventing himself again. I think this was an opportunity for Howard to reinvent himself again. And whether that worked long term, that's always debatable, but it was a whole new Howard, and Howard was now out of his basement and living in New York and going to Nobu and restaurants and meeting actresses. And I remember being very interested at the reinvention, but always remembering that Broads lineup to the station and Jackie laughing. So, fellas, Howard's getting divorced.
Yeah, that was something because I remembered being in the Post and couldn't believe it because,
Private Parts was only like 2 years earlier.
Private Parts movie was this whole love story about, love letter to his wife. And, he would always, listen, he had that character that he played about, being this, married guy, but, he seemed to have at least how he presented himself, having a very stable marriage and a very stable family. So news of that, at first I was like, it can't be true. And then he went on the air and says, it's in fact true. He did make mention where we're going to try to reconcile. I remember something like that came up in the course of the show, but that took me by surprise for sure. And it did set off this certainly new Howard that was to come and hitting the club scenes with Ralph and all that kind of stuff and the stories that would come from that. But that particular show and that news story, when that leaked, I was surprised for sure. That was big.
Andrew, Howard's getting divorced.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very big surprise for Howard Stern fans for the reasons that you said. Many of us were, very, selfishly like, all right, Howard's going to be on fire now. He's going to be, he's been pent up all this rage, all this male hormones all these years. So now he's going to go out and he's going to have stories about banging celebrities, and all that stuff.
Any level as a fan going, I'm kind of sad because I related to sort of the ball and chain Howard, work hard 5 days a week. I remember feeling a little bit sad about that too.
Not really, because I didn't think he would transform. I
move away completely from
yeah, I didn't. I figured he would become even more of a hermit, and not that I root for that, but pain is fun. Pain is funny, So it's hard for me to say that. Of course, it's sad that they got divorced, but to each their own. But it was a shocking thing, and I remember that episode. I remember how it started, but he didn't go into. He was like, "We're taking a break." Like he wasn't.
I thought he called it very painful and it really affecting his kids. I remember him.
So maybe I'm thinking, did they announce the separation before the actual divorce?
It was like, I think it was what was it? It was a separation, but I forget the term. But
like
to me,
a trial
I said
separation or something.
Not
along
trial.
those lines.
It was I don't know. But
they had mentioned early on that there was trial separation and there was hope that
did you
they
really?
would
Yeah, I mean, I didn't
but,
think even as a fan that Howard was getting back with his wife.
Yeah. So when the divorce was final, if this was that, then it's definitely a show changing moment.
Yeah,
without a doubt, and that's a lot of what this is all about. So,
did you get your number two?
No, I'm
give it to us.
Glad
please.
to share it. So my number two was, in my opinion, a very historic day in the history of the Stern Show, and that was that January 2006 date when we went on the air on Sirius XM. No, I'm sorry, on Sirius Satellite Radio.
Right.
Let me correct that.
That's right.
But it was different. It wasn't just tune in. This was going. If you look at this now, this was going back to primitive times. You had to have some kind of special device to actually listen to the show. I didn't even have the device. I bought my brother, I guess, for Hanukkah, one of these big concoction things that you had to use a cigarette adapter to plug into
your car
to work, but it was from the car. But it'd say, "Oh, I got a cigarette adapter for home that you can plug in," and then you have to put this antenna in your window to get frequency, and then call this 800 number to actually get the programming.
Yeah.
So this was no easy task, and I think there was like limited devices. You can have this one handheld device, you can have a car device, or you can have a boombox. And that's how you can listen to the show. So it was hard to listen to the show, and I didn't even have a device yet or a membership. So on 6 a.m. on that day, my brother calls me. All right, here it is, tuning in. It didn't go off on time. It was probably 5 or 10 minutes of the Ric Flair song, waiting for the show to actually start. And then when it started, Howard's like, he was like, we're a mess here. There's technical difficulties all around. Hang in, we're going to do radio DJ for a little while. And you remember him playing like some Tom Petty tunes. It's just the show is not going off. And then it got introduced with this new format with like George Takei as like an announcer and having like a news crew. And so it was just very different. And it was just off to a very, slow start with all the tech difficulties and all the tech challenges. But I just remember it clearly. And again, the challenges with which even just to listen to Howard, and those challenges lasted a while. It was probably a year or two before like a handheld Walkman type device came out, and able to listen to Howard. So it was, it was the dawning of a new generation, which I think might have been, sort of a theme, or that's Pepsi, more have been a theme that he was using. But it was a change. And I just remember that being an historic, memorable day. Not only for Great Bear, it wasn't the best show, furthest thing from it, but it was a big day in Stern history and one that I'll never forget.
I had to go to Best Buy, I think on Lyons Road, and they had to like rip out my radio and insert the Sirius XM, the Sirius piece or whatever it was attachment. I didn't have the home device, so I could only listen to Howard in the car. My biggest takeaway was the slight changes. George Takei's announcer, of course, is clearly the biggest one, and sort of the loose-fitting approach. But let me throw it to Gru. What do you think, opening day for satellite radio?
Well, of course, I had everything.
Did you? You had the house device?
I did. I had it. Actually, I had that before anything else. I had the home device, and I think I was able to take the home device and put it in the car. There was a car that something, but I had them in both. So I heard that. I'm recalling the beginning of the show with George Takei. I'm not recalling maybe I wasn't listening live. Maybe I wasn't up yet, but.
Well, he did the 2 test pattern shows.
Right. Didn't he do something like late at night or like 3 a.m.?
He did something like in the afternoon or 2 days before in the afternoon. He had everybody in there, and because he plays those on 101 from time to time.
Yeah. But as far as
I remember someone telling me Gary said a-hole. Like it was shocking.
Yeah.
But as far as the impact, it can't be overstated. So he's absolutely right. I don't recall that technical mess that you're referring to, but maybe that's because I wasn't listening live. I must not have been, because otherwise I would remember that.
Yeah, I think comparative to the last day or the second to last day of terrestrial, the Sirius opener had a lot more breadth to me than the terrestrial closing. I think the other thing I remember was Howard really talked up the collegial atmosphere at Sirius, because there was like all these cubicles of different radio stations going on at one time, and he sort of sold it also as this kind of fellowship of different stations, and they would walk over to OutQ or all just the different stations and have the interactions. But I definitely remember being very, very excited about opening day for Sirius. Real quick, before we get to our number one, I want to ask Craig, what's the viability of Sirius moving forward? Podcasts, you got music, Spotify, Apple. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on Sirius just as a product? Where do you see it going in the next? Still a player even with or without Howard? How do you see it moving for the next 5-10 years?
I think so. I think it's evolved. I think it's expanded. I think merging the two companies, a few years after Howard joined, made sense. It seems to be something that's locked into every automobile. Personally, I never listen to FM anymore because there's so much product on these stations. I think taking Howard out of the equation, I think there is so much variety on the airways. I think it still kind of gives you the feel of radio. For me, I have Spotify and have all the Apple stuff, but it doesn't seem to have, that kind of live radio DJ kind of feel that you're still getting from Sirius. So I think Sirius will continue to have staying power, and I think there's a lot of content there, with or without Howard, especially on the sports side. That seems to be really popular. So, taking it from my perspective, it's going nowhere as far as I'm concerned, and the bill's pretty high, and too lazy to call up. And
you need to. I've told Gru you need to.
I think I'm the only one though. When I called up, I said, "No, you got." I said, "I'm canceling."
You got to be willing to cancel.
And then he's like, "Okay, I'll cancel you right now." And I was like, "No."
You got to be willing to cancel.
I didn't mean it.
I went from $330 to $120 to $60 for the year. $5 a month. So that's what you got to do. Let me ask my partner, Andrew. We've talked about it briefly on other podcasts. Forgetting Howard, whether he's with them or not, what's the viability of satellite radio next 5-10 years?
Well, I'm going to use an analogy.
Oh, boy.
So, for example, in my home, I have, all the streaming services. I'm just a glutton for that stuff.
Entertainment.
Yeah. And I just, if there's something available, I have to have it. It's not a lot of money, although it adds up. But I still have access to live TV. I don't have cable, but one of my streaming services has live TV.
Go ahead.
And for whatever reason, even though I can access movies and television shows through my streaming services, if it's on TV, I'll choose that. And if it's playing live, I'll choose that over just starting it myself. I don't know why, but I feel the radio is the same way. I have every song I could ever want on my iPhone
right
that,
here.
Like
let's say classic vinyl, that's not being played live. A DJ those are on loops and.
No, but that's not my point. My
Okay.
point is that I can't make the choice. I need to have it made for me. So it's like I'll put on E Street Radio, even though I have every live Bruce Springsteen show that's available. I have it all, but I'll just put on E Street Radio so I just get a mix and whatever's going on, and then I'll put on some news or some live news, like Fox or CNN or MSNBC or POTUS, or I'll put on a sports, Busted Open, whatever. I just find myself when I'm in the car, 90% of the time I am using Sirius XM.
Okay.
Very rarely on the app, but in the car, when I'm in the car, most of the time it's Sirius.
Yeah.
So
here's my advice to Sirius: cut the number of channels, make the channel, sharpen it up, sharpen the focus of the channels, and make some of these channels better. And if there are radio performers, which I don't even think there are anymore, get them on satellite radio.
And get content that you can sell. Can't just say, come over here and listen to this stuff. Like, have some more events. I don't see much of that anymore.
Well, I even said early on, I think it was a mistake to get the Oprah Winfrey. I mean, bring the radio performers. I say bring every Howard Stern.
Get like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Get Joe Rogan.
Yeah, but I'm saying even back in 2006, get the Rush Limbaughs, get the Howard wannabes, bring them all. Bring the tried and true radio performers. They were Oprah Winfrey, big money contract, and this one and that one. Those things very rarely. Martha Stewart was another big signing early on. It did nothing. Bring radio performers, bring broadcasters.
They really they have to step it up a little bit, but I think it will be around for a while.
All right, it's time for number one. I think I'll go first then, and we'll throw it to Craig and Grill. You'll finish it up. My number one.
This is I could see he's been waiting his whole life.
Why do you got to curse
to reveal this?
My number one.
I didn't curse.
No, I was doing the that guy, the phony phone call.
Cut him off.
Cut him off. Yeah. This one, no debate, no Ganji. Gary Baba Booey Love Tape. It's the greatest show in Howard history. It has all the makings of a great Stern show. A caller revealing a secret unknown fact about the underling, about Gary. Howard prodding, beating Gary Dell'Abate into admitting that there's a love tape floating around. Howard capitalizing, creating a whole show around in which he admitted fans for a fee to watch the love tape video. The fans were hilarious. Howard and the gang mercilessly picking on Gary for this piece of embarrassment. And, of course, giving us one of the greatest drops in show history. Hello, hello. My love life, my professional life's annoying. My It spawned Bowie Maguire, and then a few years later, the Vinnie Favale love tapes. It's, for me, everything that you love about that golden era of Howard Stern. It's the most iconic show in Stern Show history. And my number one, it's the Gary Baba Booey love tape.
Well, I would call it iconic, mostly for the drop that you refer to. It's something that can never be topped on a comedic level. It's unique to the Howard Stern show, and it's an absolutely, iconic moment. Why it's not part of my list, I couldn't tell you. But I can't argue with anything you said. And thinking about it, I was like, wow, that's a good one. That's a good one. But yeah, what a good pick. And I know you love that. And I should have predicted that you would have loved that.
I think Craig talked about. I think it was somebody talked about him being a foil. But we'll throw it to Craig. Baba Booey love tape.
That's a classic without a doubt. And how cringeworthy for Gary.
Oh my God! I remember his man card was just gone, and he took it like a champ.
Lived through that. Come on, I miss you, man.
Some
of the stuff that came out of that.
So many great drops.
It's tremendous, and it's a great one. I just didn't think of it, but that's a historic episode, and that's something else. I mean, wow, yeah, the whole it's annoying, and we still hear that today. I mean, it's just added to the character that's Baba Booey.
And, it's so funny because they played Bowie McGuire on 101, and I got so caught up in the moment. Like, it felt real to me, damn it. Like, I felt Gary's emotions in the song, and Bruce's, iconic song. Just a great bit of tape. Let me toss it to Craig Hasselbein. Craig, give us your number one.
So my number one, it goes back to maybe a question I had for you guys yesterday. Does it have to be something that happened in studio? And I think we were all kind of mixed on it, but I'll just
open to interpretation.
I'll just kind of go on it. So we're in the very late 90s. Howard was brutally critical of a late night talk show and would just continue to pounce on it and attack it and make fun of it, and just in typical Howard fashion. But this was really, and it was rightfully so. The show was a mess. Only to be said, okay, put your money where your mouth is, or whatever the expression is,
what you're gonna say.
to actually receive the invite. And are you ready for magic?
Yeah,
magic. And
that is a great call.
Without a doubt, the most entertaining hour in late night history. Howard took the show over. It was the Howard Stern show in late night. He
played with the losers.
Yeah, he
right?
made fun of every single. He made fun of the sidekick. I think the sidekick got pushed out. He's like, "Where's the other guy?" And he was brutal. And Magic, I think handled it pretty well.
He did handle it well
throughout. But Howard, it was a total takeover. The losers played Wipeout with flatulence.
Yep.
But listen, I think the show embraced it because they knew they were going to have a big audience. The musical director, remember Sheila E. They did "Glamorous Life," which was her huge hit. And I also thought, which was funny about it, it sort of further mainstream Howard, but in his outrageousness. Because I remember I was watching that show with my parents. I go, "Howard's on, you got to see him." And he was in Howard in all his glory, just totally dominating that show. It was hilarious. I thought it was brilliant. Everyone was on there, and I thought it was a tremendous lift for Magic at the time, and I think the show probably lasted 1 or 2 more weeks.
Yeah, which Stern predicted on the show, I believe.
Yes,
but to me, that was a very funny era in Stern show history, and it was a lot of talk. Because the one thing with Howard, it's tough to pinpoint these episodes because so much. It's a lot of era.
Yeah.
For me, it's a lot of the K-Rock era, the movie era, and this was a particular period of time where he was just ripping apart this show, and then it kind of culminated in that very hilarious late night 1 hour. So that was a personal favorite of mine.
Gru, Howard's on Magic.
That's a great call. I remember that vividly, and just not being able to comprehend the idea of a TV show host inviting somebody on just to eviscerate him. And what Craig has said is right. It's like it sort of opened a door that had been forever shut, and now it's not so uncommon. Howard trailblazed that, but that was appointment television, without a doubt. So great call, love it.
I always remember Robin yelling out "Wipeout," and I think not only was there flatulence, I think a queefer was on there as well.
Yep.
And just not being able to hit her mark, and just and I
so
also remember.
deaf.
I remember feeling Magic's graciousness, and I don't know.
Yeah, I almost felt bad for him.
Yes, I did, because I don't know if the plan was, what, let's bring Howard on, we'll get a ratings bump, which I believe they did, but then like Craig said, fell back to earth immediately, and I think it was a matter of time before the show was off the air. I believe Magic did return the favor, so to speak, and went on Howard's show, where I think it pretty much continued the merciless mocking. So Magic was good natured about it. So yeah, that's definitely that's a great, not only a great choice, but a very interesting one, because I forgot about that, and I do remember being glued to my TV set watching Howard on late night. Andrew Guthius, you'll close us out. Give us your number one.
Okay, so my number one is probably not going to generate much talk from you guys because it's a very personal choice. It's my favorite episode of the Howard Stern Show of all time. It's from November of 1994, and and it is the show in which William Shatner appeared for the very first time. The show encompassed everything about the Howard Stern show that we knew and loved. It incorporated the chemistry of the core. It included incredible comedy. It included controversy, specifically with William Shatner and George Takei. It included Billy West coming in and doing certain impressions that added to the narrative of the show. It included a guest who literally, there are some guests who come in for the first time and it's like they've been coming there for years, and this was one of them. It was right in the thick of the governor's race. Howard had dropped out and endorsed George Pataki. He was on before William Shatner, so there was a lot of the David Peel stuff with that. And it was like I think it was the day before Election Day, and the guy who was going to be elected governor was calling into the Howard Stern show, promising to make him Secretary of Transportation if he were to win. And sure enough, he won. George Pataki, and Howard ended up on the platform with him at the inauguration.
Yes, he did.
It was the show was the first use of the "Oh My" drop because it had been recorded the week before when George Takei was on bashing William Shatner. And this entire show, from beginning to end, from Pataki beginning the show to Robin's news, all the way through, is an absolute stunner of a show that, just for personal reasons, I just find myself enjoying listening to any moment, and laughing. So that's my number one pick. It's just the show that encompasses everything I love about the Stern Show.
Yeah, and you're a Shatner fan, so that that makes sense for you. I remember it being funny for Shatner's timing, and specifically kind of undermining George's negative feelings towards him, more like Shatner being like George, who are you? Do we even know each other?
I don't even know you.
Right. You were such
Georgie.
you were like a very small player, and kind of dismissing that, which I think probably really irked George even further. But that was that I recall specifically being hilarious, and Shatner would continue to be a really good guest and just a good character on the show, whether he was present or not. Because Shatner's, he's got a role in Stern Show history for sure. That's continued on long since that appearance.
Iconic, I don't know if I'd call it iconic. It's clearly your favorite. I think it shows Shatner's incredible graciousness as a guest, because he absolutely rolls with every nasty, naughty punch that Howard throws at him. And I think, is that the one with the classic homo room segment?
That was his third episode.
Okay, because that was to me, that to me is the iconic Shatner segment in which he goes and plays ping pong.
I'll give you that.
Ping pong with his penis with Howard in the homo room. And
I'll give you that.
The water dripping in the background is just a classic, visual or whatever in your head. But I mean, Shatner clearly it knows how to roll with the punches.
Yeah.
Even back in the day before that was sort of in vogue, so to speak. I mean, Shatner, and I think I do remember him too being a tad bit dismissive to George Takei, which was funny in itself.
Yeah,
so
it was just the chemistry between not only Howard and Shatner, but Howard and Robin. Robin, they were trading barbs with Shatner, and Robin was right on top. Like, it just, everything was clicking, and if you listen to the flow of the show, everything just clicks. When Billy West calls in as George Takei, and I think Shatner was buying it in the beginning. But then they let him off the hook, but it was just an absolute riot.
Real quick, off the top of your head, what's when I say Robin Quivers, iconic favorite moment? What pops into your head? Stern Show. Quickly.
That's I don't know I don't know what did
I think of two things. I think of her admitting. Now there's the one where she had backdoor sex with the gentleman that she met that night, but I think the better admission is running in California and having diarrhea, crapping her pants and having to be hosed off by a Mexican gardener on the side of the street in San Francisco. I think of that one. I also think, not iconic, but a favorite clip is Howard and Jackie getting on her for not making her Cleveland book appearance, and she's exhausted. And that gave her,
I remember that,
added to her legend of being Robin Ophelia Quivers, and, she wasn't quite the grinder, perhaps, like the other guys were, and she was, highfalutin, so to speak. So, indelible player in the show. Any thoughts on a Robin Quivers moment?
Coffee enemas.
Yeah.
That's a big piece of it. It's hard to remember a specific moment, but I do remember how she would argue or fight with Gary often. If Gary ever called her out on something, very defensive. But at the same time, Howard has made it clear that he can't function this show without her.
He's made that clear.
So she's just been just kind of part of the landscape, and she fits in. She's been a very valuable player. And she adds some things, that are specific, even to the humor of it. Her joy of singing is something that certainly stands out, and her highfalutin friends with which she socializes with is also a point of
the Witches' Covenant and
Simona
Dinnerstein.
So she's a very
ayahuasca. Yeah, stuff
very
like
intelligent woman as well, is what she comes across.
I'll add one final thing. I think the thing that keeps me from embracing her completely is that she's the only one in there who doesn't really seem to be the nicest person. She doesn't seem to be a very nice person. Even for all the things Howard does and says, he seems to be a genuinely nice person, and Gary seems to be a nice person. All these guys, Fred, Robin seems to be a very passive and aloof kind of person, and that's just an arrogant. There's an arrogance to her that I see, or that I hear. So that's maybe that might be the one thing that keeps me from really loving Robin as a figure on the show. But the argument that she's necessary, there's no argument.
Well, loving her as a figure on the show is one thing. I've never felt that way about Robin, but do you? I mean, is there an arrogance there?
Maybe. I don't. She always claims it's a character.
She has always said that the Robin Quivers on the air is not the Robin Quivers.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a little bit of. She's very confident in what she has to share. She's certainly.
Maybe that comes across.
Yeah, there's arrogance, and she's not the most comedic member of that ensemble by any stretch. And she is a bit of a kind of agrees with a lot of what Howard shares. But she's just a staple and someone that we've come to become extremely used to over the course of time, and the show without her is certainly lacking a big piece. But I think there's been some memorable Robin moments over the years, and I think it all cemented back in the movie. Remember when when they had that fight in the middle of the street?
That's probably an iconic moment in the film.
You got carte blanche.
As we wrap it up, Howard's on his final contract. Real quick predictions: is he signing with Sirius in some form or fashion? What might that look like? Or is he done? Or podcasting? What is he? What are we doing next?
This is a tough one because he's claimed this is my last contract. This is my last contract. I'm feeling good. 5 more years. My whole thing is, if he wants to keep doing it, I don't know where else he would go. It's a perfect medium for him. It's grown. There's a real audience now attached to this as opposed to 2006. For him at his age to go someplace else, to start building an audience, to start building subscriptions, to me would be just a challenge. So if I had to predict, he'll re-sign again in some capacity, and maybe kind of the cushy type of schedule that he's got now, or maybe even a little cushier. Yep. I just don't see going to another medium really just makes sense for him at this point. He's built this up. Sure, he's got a lot at stake. So, I would predict he's not done yet.
I'll jump in. I agree with Craig. I think he'll get an even cushier deal. I don't know about the money. I don't think the money's he's gonna have to step down from the money in terms of what his expectation is. But I think even cushier, maybe it's 31-hour specials a year or something to that effect. But I think he will sign, and if he's able to, if they agree on the money, I think they'd be willing to give them the cushy because the content's there. They could just replay whatever old bits and old segments and things like that. Andy, what do you think Howard's doing?
No, I agree with you. He's going to resign. There's literally no reason not to. For every reason you've said. If he wants to, he could be paid a whole bunch of money to a couple days a week work from his basement if he wants. There's no reason to move anywhere else. Plus, I don't think he would do a podcast because he needs.
Well, the show is essentially a podcast anyway.
Yeah, but he needs the support of the staff. He needs the production. He needs to be able to just sit down, hit a button, and talk while everybody else does all the work. So I don't think he's leaving Sirius.
Yeah, I think the scenario that I put out could be even more open to because, as I said earlier, like I listened to the Mike Francesa podcast now to get my New York sports news. He's better on podcasts now. Okay, but
hey, Doug. Okay,
he doesn't have the 3 hours to fill. He can do 45 minutes, and it's edited. If he makes a mistake, we can go back and Howard's getting older now. And Howard, there's mistakes, and 3 hours is maybe tough to fill at this age. So, I think doing some kind of short form interview or specials. It's probably the way he's going to go if he resigns.
See, if he did that, I would sort of be for it because it'd be something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Instead of, well, all right, so he's not going to be on, daily anymore, but that once a month or once every other week, that every other Friday maybe, it's going to be a fun drive to work like that. So, yeah, he'll resign.
Never on a Friday.
Oh, no, yeah.
Well, all right, well, yeah. It's the Sabbath, yeah, I understand.
Well, Gru, as we wrap it up, give us one thing you're watching this week.
One thing I'm watching this week is a documentary. I watched it a few days ago on Max. It's about the comedian Albert Brooks. It's called Defending My Life, and it's just about the life and career of who really, once you watch it, you realize what a comedy icon the guy is, and it's really well done, very entertaining, very funny, and it's on Max. Good stuff. Albert Brooks, Defending My Life.
I got nothing.
Really?
Golden Bachelor. Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. There, I watched that.
Hey, you watched the first episode.
Look good. I'm
hooked.
Anything with Godzilla, I'm hooked. Craig, anything you want to recommend to our viewers?
I have to finish Billions because I've been invested, so I have to finish out the series. It's so I got to get those episodes done, and then when I'm not watching that, I'll just be watching Karen videos on YouTube.
All right, watch Karen videos. Well, this has been a pleasure. Before we wrap it up. Our next episode of Van Damme, Gru and I will ponder the notion what if Jean-Claude Van Damme was actually a secret agent and his entire film career was intended to be a front for his black ops mission? That's going to be the premise of Jean-Claude Van Johnson. It's on Amazon Prime. JCVD plays an unhappily retired action star lured back into the spy game by a chance encounter. 6 episodes of Jean-Claude fun. Gru, it's Jean-Claude Van Damme doing the television thing. Any thoughts?
Yeah, mostly about this. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I've never seen this, and it sounds really interesting. It sounds like a lot of fun. Looking forward to watching it and discussing with you.
All right, and for our next episode of Nothing Worthwhile, Gru and I will be back watching with you. We'll be watching our third wrestling match watch-along. It's the greatest of all time, John Cena versus the newest member of AEW. WWE Hall of Famer Edge in a tables, ladders, and chairs match for the WWE Championship. It's 2006. It's Unforgiven. Both guys seemingly in their prime. Gru, watching John Cena and Edge, TLC.
I'm going to enjoy this because this is an era that I wasn't really watching. So I'll be able to see stuff, through my 2023 lens for the first time. So I'm looking forward to doing this with you.
Craig Hassenbein, line up the shots of McAllen. It's done. We will sleep well tonight. Thank you for giving us yet again another wonderful New York experience. Love you and your family, and we really, really super appreciate it. I'm glad that we're able to do it again.
Oh, wow. Thanks for being here, guys. Makes this weekend such a special tradition, and this was a blast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah,
this was a good one. I'm looking forward to listening to us on the plane ride home. Andrew, take us out of here.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this very special episode of Nothing Worthwhile, the top 5 Howard Stern iconic moments. Thank you to Craig and Deb Hassenbein for having us for this very special weekend, for a very special show. Next week, as you know, we'll be discussing JCVJ, Jean-Claude Van Johnson, the Jean-Claude Van Damme show, followed by, what are we doing the following week? Oh, yeah, we are doing the watch-along, Cena Punk.
He's the new Snoop Dogg, folks.
It's Cena Punk, right?
No, Cena Edge.
Cena Edge. Well, they're the same. No, Cena Punk. I'm Cena Edge. Sorry, it's very late. Very late.
But real quick, what percentage CM Punk shows up at Survivor Series? 0 out of 100.
90.
Okay, good. All right.
What about you?
91.
91. He wants to do the Price is Right thing.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you to Craig for being with us on this show. Thank you to everybody out there. We will see you next week live from our original Nothing Worthwhile studio. Have a good night. Quack, quack.